We'll start the show in just a second, but first I want to tell you about today's sponsors. Blinkist is the app that helps you become a more well-rounded person by letting you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. You can try it for free and get 25% off a subscription by going to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. SteadyMD lets you maintain a meaningful, long-lasting relationship with a primary care physician who you can meet with anytime over phone or video chat. You don't need insurance. It's only $99 a month with no other fees or copays. Visit SteadyMD.com/Pakman to get started. I have good news and bad news to start with today, and they're both the same, depending on your perspective. Donald Trump last night gave what is likely to be his last rally ever as president of the United States. If you like the Trump craziness, it's coming to an end. If you dislike it, it's coming to an end. So it's good or bad, depending on your perspective. It was bizarre. It was deranged. It was also really boring. And it took place in Georgia. The point of the rally supposedly was to support the two Republican senators running in today's elections, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. But down to every detail, the entire event was a farce. David Perdue couldn't even be at the rally because he's in coronavirus quarantine. Of the nearly 90 minutes that Donald Trump ranted, almost none of it was about the Senate candidates. It was mostly about Trump, much of it telling lie after lie. It is not an exaggeration to say Donald Trump told hundreds of lies during yesterday's rally, insisting he won, at one point simply citing supposed county level vote count numbers from election night, the crowd completely silent for long stretches of the rally, and down to the last element. I mean, even Trump's face, more orange than we've ever seen it, despite his pale hands. Every detail could not have been more absurd. And as I like to say, indistinguishable from satire. So let's get right into it. Here is Donald Trump within seconds opening up the rally by lying about the results in Georgia.
Well, I want to thank you very much. Hello, Georgia. By the way, there's no way we lost Georgia. There's no way. That was a rigged election, but we're still fighting it, and you'll see what's going to happen. We'll talk about it.
And this was the theme. Trump moments later saying if Democrats take the White House, and then realizing, hold on a second, no, they're not taking it. We won.
If the liberal Democrats take the Senate and the White House, and they're not taking this White House, we're going to fight like hell, I'll tell you right now.
And the theme was that the crowd really didn't seem to care very much about Loeffler and Perdue. They seemed to just be there for Trump, but even Trump got too boring for them for long stretches and they tuned out, which we'll get to. Donald Trump then alluding to once again, hoping that Mike Pence can steal the election for him tomorrow.
And I hope Mike Pence comes through for us, I have to tell you. I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. He's a great guy. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much.
So this is wild for two reasons. First, that Donald Trump is publicly pressuring the vice president to steal the election. And second, that Donald Trump seems to believe that Mike Pence can steal the election. Pence's role in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, as we talked about yesterday, is really perfunctory. And we're all going to see that tomorrow, so I won't get ahead of myself. Here is an example of Donald Trump ranting about things nobody in the crowd seemed to understand, and the crowd is silent. At one point, I wondered, did the crowd leave? But they were there, just not making a peep.
And you've got to swarm it tomorrow. Now, the good thing about tomorrow, it's one state, so you have a lot of eyeballs watching. It's tougher than when you have 50 states and they do it to various states. I've never seen anything like it. You know, I was leading in Pennsylvania by hundreds of thousands of votes. All of a sudden, I was tired. I said, what happened? They'll make Washington, D.C. and other liberal places the 51st, 52nd, 53rd states of the Union, guaranteeing.
You can almost hear the room tone louder than you can hear the crowd. It's really wild how dead silent Trump was able to get this crowd to be. Trump then defiantly clarifying he does not concede, even though he did lose 2 months ago, after all.
Nothing and no one will be able to stop them The Senate seats are truly the last line of defense. Now, I must preface that by saying, because they'll say, he just conceded. No, I don't concede.
That got the crowd awake. Trump not conceding. That's the one thing he should be doing, and mentioning that is what really gets the crowd fired up. So then this is funny. When Donald Trump did talk about David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, which was almost not at all, but that was the point of the rally in theory, the crowd is totally bored when Trump talks about Perdue and Loeffler. Here he is talking about David Perdue, who it wasn't even clear whether Trump knew Perdue wasn't there because he was quarantining. Doesn't matter. You'll see the camera, if you're watching, pan around. And although the lack of masks is notable, the lack of enthusiasm is as well.
Over the last 4 years, David Perdue has been one of our greatest allies and strongest defenders in Washington. He's a great gentleman.
And then the crowd just as bored when Trump was talking about Kelly Loeffler, just barely a cheer.
Georgia has another fantastic champion in Senator Kelly Loeffler. Kelly is a staunch defender of our incredible military. I'm so proud of our military. She supports the wall, and she always stands with the heroes of law enforcement, ICE.
Usually they pump up the crowd noise. I was wondering whether they were suppressing the crowd noise, and that's a joke. They weren't. The crowd was just that silent for much of this rally, a deflated, empty speech. The cringiest moment in the whole thing was probably this moment when Donald Trump called up Republican Senate candidate Kelly Loeffler to the stage, and she had an announcement to make, which was that tomorrow she will object to the counting of the electoral votes. That got the crowd interested. They woke up for that.
Hello, Georgia! Woo! Thank you, Georgia. I have an announcement, Georgia. On January 6th, I will object to the Electoral College vote. That's right. Thank you.
What energy, right? I mean, just the energy just oozing off of Kelly Loeffler there, loudly announcing she will also be making a fool out of herself in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. And Trump then seemed to be visibly struggling to get to the end of his speech. You're going to hear him sort of slurring here, mixing up words. The last 20 minutes were just one of the most poorly delivered speeches that I've seen from Trump, and that says a lot.
We have all seen what our opponents are capable of doing. I ran 2 elections. I won both of them. Second one, much more successful than the first. But we can't let this happen any longer. On election night, we were leading by so much. We're not going to have that tomorrow.
So then this is the part that's really nuts. For about 20 straight minutes, Trump read with terrible inflection and tone alleged voting results from various counties. And here he is wanting to talk about Maricopa County, Arizona, but he's only able to get out the word Mayacopa. And it doesn't even matter because everybody's tuned out by this point anyway.
His constituents reported that their earlier in-person ballots may not have been correctly processed or tabulated in Maricopa County officials.
Yeah, so this was the part that had the crowd completely checked out, just droning on like this for 20 minutes. Here's another part of it. You could really hear a pin drop in this place.
The committee then heard additional testimony concerning voting irregularities during the 2020 general election, including testimony and a real-time test demonstrating serious irregularities with Dominion's voting machines. 3 events discussed at this hearing stand out and require a forensic order of the Dominion voting machines in Georgia to be immediately conducted.
The one phrase that woke people back up was Trump mentioning Dominion voting machines. The sycophants have almost been trained in a Pavlovian manner. If you hear Dominion, that you have to react to, but they were really struggling to remain even remotely engaged with Trump droning on and on about votes and ballots. And then during his wind-up sort of crescendo, Trump actually glitches on the word America, and he tries to cover it up by flexing his bicep.
We have made America strong again. Look at that arm. Look at that.
Trump commonly does this. We saw this dozens and dozens of times during his presidency. When he sort of glitches out during a word, he'll do something physical to distract from it. He'll flex his arm, or he'll slap the lectern a couple of times, or he'll turn to the other side of the audience and say, whoa, hey, how about that? So Trump's final rally, as expected, all about himself. He seemed sort of to try to go through the motions of talking about David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, but he really couldn't do it. And what he did do is spend a lot of time claiming that he won in November. We are very close to the end. Very, very close. And the next question is, what will Trump do between tomorrow, when the electoral votes are counted, and January 20th, when Joe Biden is sworn in? Will we see him at all? Will he tweet? Will he go crazy tweeting? Will he not tweet at all? We don't know, but you can join me tonight live on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook for Georgia Senate results, starting somewhere in the 7 p.m. Eastern hour. And then tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, join me live on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook for the counting of the electoral votes, supposedly the last stand for the Trumpists, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. Join me tonight and join me tomorrow. All right, this is super interesting, and it's really just a pleasure to watch. One of the most prominent people who plans to formally object, sir, I object to the counting of the electoral votes tomorrow, is Republican Senator Josh Hawley. Because Josh Hawley was, I guess, because he was the first senator to announce he would object, he's received more attention than some other senators who jumped on the bandwagon after the fact. And Josh Hawley went on Fox News yesterday. Good for him. And Brett Baier actually pushed back on the nonsense that Josh Hawley was touting. And Josh Hawley became visibly uncomfortable. He had that look on his face that Tucker Carlson is known for, where it's sort of like a dog hearing your voice out of the answering machine and kind of like a confusion. And when Brett Baier starts pushing back on Josh Hawley gets that look. Here is Brett Baier starting with, what exactly is the point of you objecting tomorrow or, Wednesday? What is the goal of that? Take a listen.
So the Supreme Court didn't take up that case either. They did not take up the case, the Supreme Court. We've seen courts across the country deal not only with not the standing of different cases, but also the evidence, and some of them Trump judges. I just want to pin you down on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to say that as of January 20th, that President Trump will be president?
Well, Brett, that depends on what happens on Wednesday. I mean, this is why we have the debate.
No, it doesn't.
This is why
I mean,
we
the
have
states,
the
by the Constitution, say they certify the election. They did certify it. By the Constitution, Congress doesn't have the right to overturn the certification, at least as most experts read it.
So Brett Baier is completely correct. Tomorrow's electoral vote count is ceremonial. Mike Pence's role is perfunctory. The states have already certified their electoral votes. That's the legally binding piece, state certification. Tomorrow is really ceremonial. And this is where Josh Hawley starts to get a sourpuss look on his face, like he bit into a lemon, and to start to tell some lies.
Well, Congress is directed under the 12th Amendment to count the electoral votes. There's a statute that dates back to the 1800s, 19th century, that says that there is a right to object, there's a right to be heard, and there's also a certification process.
That's from 1876, Senator, and it's right. the Tilden-Hayes race, in which there were 3 states that did not certify their electors. So Congress was left to come up with this system, this commission, that eventually got to a negotiated grand bargain. But now all of the states have certified their elections as of December 14th. So it doesn't, by constitutional ways, open a door to Congress to overturn that, does it?
When Brett Baier knows the example that Hawley is referring to, Hawley realizes, oh no, this is not going to go that well. And Brett Baier is completely correct. What Josh Hawley is referring to is a mechanism that's really in place for when some states have not certified the electoral vote. That's not the case this year. Every state on December 14th, can you believe it's been a month since that? It feels like days. On December 14th, every state certified the electoral vote. And then listen to Josh Hawley's answer.
Well, no, I'm talking about the statute, Brett. There's a statute that governs what Congress does on January the 6th. And it says that we have a vote of certification and that we have the opportunity to debate the results, to certify the results. We count them and then we certify. And my point is, this is my only opportunity during this process to raise an objection and to be heard. I don't have standing to file lawsuits. I'm not a prosecutor anymore. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. I can't investigate claims of voter fraud on my own, but I do have a responsibility in this joint session of Congress to either say I've got no problem with it or I do have a problem with it. And my constituents expect me and they're right to say I have a problem.
Constituents? Don't you have a responsibility to tell them that it's not going to be President Trump as of January 21st as well?
Well, Brett,
So there, Josh Hawley kind of admits the truth, which is this is all I can do. And that's what this is all about. What is there that anyone can do, given that Joe Biden won? And all they can do is virtue signal to Donald Trump that they are trying. So Hawley has definitely, he seemed to be expecting more of a fawning softball interview from Brett Baier. Much of the Fox News audience is furious with Brett Baier for pointing out that Josh Hawley is lying to them after all. You would think that an audience would want to know if an elected official is lying to them. But no, the Fox audience is mad that Brett Baier exposed Josh Hawley's lies. But Hawley's just squirming, and it's fantastic. And it will all be over very soon. I'm still receiving, and we even got some paid super chats during yesterday's Trump rally live stream. I'm still getting messages from people saying, totally seriously, David, don't you realize that by Thursday, Trump will be the official winner and Biden is going to be in handcuffs? Well, listen, I don't even have to argue. We're down to the last 48 hours. Let's wait and see, and we will see very soon. Let me know what you expect tomorrow in Washington, D.C. Let me know via Twitter, where you can find me at @DPakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
What if you could read 10 books in just one sitting? That's exactly what one of my favorite apps lets you do. It's called Blinkist, and what they do is take thousands of popular nonfiction books. They condense them down into text or audio that you can consume in 15 minutes. Blinkist makes sure that you're getting all of the important core insights from each book. So it's perfect for exploring a book you otherwise wouldn't have time for. If there's a full book you're thinking about buying, you can use Blinkist to get a sample first. Just think how much you can enrich yourself by being able to soak up an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. I recently read A Brief History of Time, of course, by the great Stephen Hawking. This is a book that I have been aware of for so long, and other things got in the way, and it was fantastic to check it out on Blinkist. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month, and you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So this is just magical. Yesterday, as we already discussed, Donald Trump did what might be his last ever rally as president, and he did it in Dalton, Georgia. And Fox News Channel was on the ground there, and reporter Griff Jenkins was interviewing people. And he starts interviewing some guy with a huge red Stop the Steal hat who apparently had been camping out in a sleeping bag awaiting last night's rally. And as this is going on, there's a guy in a MAGA hat in the background flashing this new white power hand signal with his hand. And I'll explain more about that in a moment. And although it takes about 12 seconds too long, maybe 14 seconds, eventually Fox News makes the decision to just cut the video. And they cut to a shot of the White House in which nothing is going on. And I'll explain to you after we look at the clip how we know that this was definitely an abrupt decision made live. They weren't purposely saying, hey, at this point, we planned to show you what was going on at the White House. It was a decision made on the fly to get the white power symbol off the screen. Take a look and then we'll discuss.
And the elections tomorrow, do you care about that? Are you worried about that?
Absolutely. I think everybody in the nation should care about it. It's a federal issue in a way, who becomes senators. It's going to have a very big impact on the Senate. I support Senators Perdue and Loeffler. I hope that they are elected. And, if somebody from California can come out here and camp out in 0-degree weather in a sleeping bag on the asphalt, maybe a few more voters from Georgia will find the time to get to the polls.
And quickly, Blake, do you believe, since you're worried about the stop the steal in election shenanigans, are you worried about the integrity of the election tomorrow for Loeffler and Perdue?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm worried about it. I just hope that the correct actions have been taken to make sure that this time around the ballot custody is safeguarded and there aren't extra.
So after about 14 seconds of that white power sign being held up, they switched to a shot of the White House. Now, we can tell this was a sort of emergency measure, an abrupt, evasive maneuver, because number one, nothing is happening at the White House in the shot. Number two, they keep the White House video up too long to make any visual sense. And number three, if it was on purpose, when news networks switch to a shot of the White House, either the voiceover or a lower third will tell you why we are looking at the White House. Like, for example, they'd switch to a shot of the White House and they would say at the bottom, awaiting Trump departure from White House or something along those lines. So clearly this was like an abrupt attempt to cover the white power hand signal that was taking place during the interview. Now, hilariously, the 12 or 14 seconds it took to pull the shot off of the screen, I would love to know what the conversation was in the control room. Oh, no. White power sign. Do we cut it? No. That's too abrupt. Let's just wait and hope the guy takes it down. Oh, no, he's keeping it up. OK, let's cut it. Yeah, but what do we cut to? I don't know. Maybe the White House. Yeah. Cut to the White House real quick. Now, just to do this justice and make it informative, you might be saying white power symbol, the OK hand sign ever since I was a kid. That didn't mean white power. How does it now mean white power? And context is key here. We have to be able to, as intelligent Homo sapiens, apply an understanding of context. In most situations, the OK hand sign is perfectly fine. And it would be obvious to everybody that it means OK, not white power. The idea of the hand sign is that it creates a W and a P, and we're putting up a drawing of that on the screen. And this dates back to a 2017 hoax from the internet where it was falsely promoted as a symbol of hate. So understand, and a lot of people, if you don't mention this, they get mad. The origins were for an online enclave to pretend that this is a symbol of hate, meaning white power, and that it's not in reality. But then by 2019, it actually lost some of the satire. And there are people who now seriously use it as a symbol of hate. And the point is, we shouldn't jump to conclusions. We have to analyze each situation. Here we have someone who's deliberately standing in the background of a shot at a political rally, holding the sign up while wearing Trump gear. Context tells us he's not telling us everything is okay and the weather is great. All right. So whether in this case it's a satirical white power signal or a real white power signal, clearly this guy is not saying great weather, guys. That's what I'm communicating. And even Fox News recognized it eventually. I mean, it took them 12 or 14 seconds and they cut away. What an amazing time we live in, isn't it? Let's do a little bit of a, talking sense on vaccination, because the vaccination disinformation that is spreading is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not a segment to correct medical misinformation about vaccines. Later today, we'll talk to Dr. Eric Topol about the medical aspects of vaccination. We've done that before. So this is not about, the vaccine will give you COVID or Bill Gates will microchip you. We've debunked that stuff separately. This is a segment about the political misinformation about coronavirus vaccines. Things like Trump delivered a vaccine or Operation Warp Speed is doing great. Thanks to America for the vaccine, that type of stuff. So this is going to be a great opportunity to go over where we are today on vaccination. And the bottom line is the first vaccine to be approved, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, was developed by two Turkish immigrants to Germany, in Germany, very early in the pandemic, before Donald Trump did a thing about the coronavirus. It had nothing to do with Trump. It had nothing to do with the Trump administration, period. Donald Trump has bragged about how, thanks to him, we developed vaccines faster than ever before. That has nothing to do with Donald Trump. The reason we developed vaccines so quickly is that the mRNA platform for vaccines, instead of working on dead or weakened virus, works by giving cells instructions for how to make proteins that trigger an immune response. That technology, by its nature, shortens the vaccine development time. That's why the vaccines, both in and out of the U.S., were developed so quickly. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. So in terms of development, there's very little to even talk about regarding Donald Trump. Now, what does have to do with Donald Trump is vaccine distribution in the United States. And that's been an absolute and total disaster. Number one, remember that Donald Trump previously promised us 100 million vaccine doses by the end of the year. Last year, 2020, we didn't get there. More recently, the Trump administration promised 20 million vaccinations by the end of 2020. We did not get there. And where we are today, and Bloomberg has a very good vaccine tracker, is that as of a few hours ago, 13 million doses of the vaccine have been distributed. And that term, we're still unclear on distributed means what exactly. Only 4.3 million first doses have been injected. And remember that you need 2 doses with the current vaccines. The second doses are just now starting. So we were supposedly going to have 20 million vaccinated by December 31st. Instead, we have 4.3 million partially vaccinated by January 5th. This is an abject failure. Now, it's not completely clear what the holdup is, but this is going very much like testing. They lied about testing early, and they seem to be lying about vaccines early as well. So for things that actually have to do with Trump, which are vaccination distribution, it's a disaster. There is one other aspect to this. Vaccination is going to remain slower than it has to be, thanks to Donald Trump. As I told you the week before last, in late July, Trump turned down the opportunity to buy another 100 million doses from Pfizer. So Pfizer said, okay, well, if you don't want them, we'll sell them to other countries. And that's exactly what they did. So instead of getting another 100 million doses in the first quarter of this year, or even in the second quarter of this year, Donald Trump has now salvaged a purchase of 100 million more Pfizer doses from a future shipment, which are due to us by July 31. If we don't get those until July 31, that means that those will not be injected into people until August, September, and October. Utterly embarrassing and a total failure. That's the real record of the Trump administration on vaccines. Great things have happened, including the development of multiple effective vaccines and the start of a vaccination program. None of that has to do with Trump. Where Trump was involved, which is this early logistics program, it's been a failure. It would be hilarious, except it is an utter tragedy of cataclysmic proportions, which is leading to unnecessary death. Hopefully, President Joe Biden will be able to accelerate vaccine distribution. We'll have more about this on the David Pakman Show Instagram page. Find us there at David Pakman Show. You can find me on Instagram as well at david.pakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
If you are anything like me, you probably aren't thrilled with the idea of going into a doctor's office right now. And thankfully, there's a practical and affordable way to take control of your health and get personalized care from the comfort of your home. It's a service called SteadyMD. They're one of our sponsors. You take a quiz, you get matched with a licensed primary care physician who understands your health needs. You have a 1-hour video call with your new doctor. You establish a meaningful relationship with them. And after that, your doctor is available to you anytime by text, phone, or video chat. This is not a random doctor on call. Each doctor at SteadyMD has a limited number of patients, so they actually have time to listen to you. You get the personal attention that you deserve. They can do almost everything an in-person doctor can do: perform medical evaluations, talk to you about health concerns, send prescriptions to your home or local pharmacy, and anything they can't do online, they'll quickly set you up with an in-person provider to do things like blood tests, as an example. You don't need insurance. It's only $99 a month with no other fees or copays. I took their quiz. They matched me with a doctor who specializes in my particular health needs and situation. The doctor they gave me is a really perfect fit for me and my medical needs. They have a special offer only for my audience. You'll get 50% off your first month, but only until January 31st. So make sure to sign up soon. Click the link right underneath this video.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Today, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Eric Topol, who is founder and director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute, also a professor of molecular medicine and executive vice president at Scripps Research. It's so great to have you on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, David, great to be with you.
So let's maybe start with vaccination and kind of center our conversation there. We have currently 2 approved vaccines in the United States under emergency use authorization for coronavirus, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, as well as the Moderna vaccine. There are other vaccines that have started to be approved in other countries, all currently, correct me if I'm wrong, mRNA platform vaccines. There has been much made of the short amount of time it has taken to get these vaccines. This is something that is merely a function of the platform. Is that right? It just takes less time to develop a vaccine under this paradigm.
Well, a few things just to clear up there.
Yes.
So, yes, the mRNA platform did work very quickly within days of having the sequence of the virus that was released from the Chinese scientist in January. Within days, there was already a template for an mRNA vaccine. But there are some other vaccines besides the 2 that you mentioned that have gotten approval on an emergency basis in other countries that are not mRNA. So, for example, the AstraZeneca is an adenovirus vector, not an mRNA. Basically, and a couple of the Chinese firm and the Russian Sputnik, these are different. They're using viral proteins rather than the mRNA, which is basically just giving into the muscle a message to make spike protein that's modified instead of the virus. So it's perfect because you don't have to risk any virus. It's just that one component, which is an excellent target. And by the way, David, all the vaccines do have that common thread. They use the spike protein as the primary target.
Is there anything, what is important, I'll say it more broadly, what is important for the average vaccine recipient to know in terms of the differences for them in receiving an mRNA-based vaccine versus the weakened or dead virus-based vaccine?
Right. So, basically you have 2 trials that came out first that were very large, 44,000 with the Pfizer-BioNTech and 30,000 plus with the Moderna. They both had 95% efficacy. They both had really good safety profile without concerns there, at least out to 2 months. And that should cover most of the concerns on safety. So that's kind of the new reference standard for the other vaccines. So the AstraZeneca at the main dose that it's been tested so far had an efficacy of 62% using a viral vector. And then others have come in at variable levels, but they haven't had as large trial experience. So what you really want as a vaccinee, a person getting a vaccine, you want to know how high is the efficacy, how well was it tested, was it in really large trials with good follow-up. These are important concerns because we're seeing some reduction in threshold for getting approval because obviously we're in a very dire situation right now.
Yeah. When we hear about numbers like 95%, as you are talking about, that would suggest that out of every 20 people that get the vaccine, 1 will not develop sufficient protection against an infection. Is it possible to know through an antibody test whether you are in that 5%? And if so, would it be potentially something you could do in looking at getting another vaccine? If you get the Moderna and you're in the 5%, can you go and get the Pfizer and maybe you'll be in the 19 out of 20?
Right, right. That's a really great question. And actually, I share your interest in having a neutralization antibody test. We don't have one that would tell you for sure that you're protected.
Yeah.
Because it isn't 100%. In the Moderna trial, which was interesting, for severe infections that would require hospitalization, it was 30 versus 0. So it looked like it was 100%, but those are very small numbers.
Yeah.
But so one thing is you want to be protected, and it's not yes or no. I mean, you want to be protected from, most importantly, is severe infections, but you want to be fully protected. There's another layer of concern here that isn't settled, and that is you could get the virus in your upper airway, particularly your nose, nasal lining, mucosa, and you could pass it on without that. This is that term of mucosal immunity or sterilization immunity. And so we don't have a full readout on that yet. We have some encouraging preliminary data. So yes, you're right. If we could find out the people who didn't get the ideal response, you could try another vaccine. That's right. And we don't have any, commercial assay to get the answer to your question, David. I wish we did, because then you would, about 2 weeks or a month after you got your second dose,
right,
you would get a checkpoint. And then if you weren't high levels of neutralization antibody, you would get another vaccine. That would be the ideal scenario, but nobody's talking about that. You're the first one that's really brought that out.
Yeah, and when you start doing the math, if you say, well, what are the odds that if you've got a room of people, I think if I understand the math correctly, if you have a room of 20 people and you vaccinate all of them, there's a 5% chance one has no immunity. And is it correct to say there's a 2.5% chance that 2 of those 20 end up with no immunity? I mean, is the math that simple?
Well, it's not quite that precise. The reason is that, these trials were really large, and we're only talking about a tiny subset,
right,
who were the first ones to cross the line and get infections. So the numbers, as you get much larger, could be different. I mean, this is kind of giving you a ballpark. There were highly significant differences, of course,
yeah,
but it could turn out to be 3% or 7%. We don't know.
Okay.
There's another part of this story that's interesting to point out, and that is the trials are the ideal experience. That is, they're conducted, rigorously with how the vaccines are given. But in the real world, they may have gotten thawed out early. They may not have, been cared for. The actual glass
vials.
Vials. Yeah, good. Yeah. Thank you. That were not kept in the deep freeze or whatever. So you see, it may be a little different in the real world. It usually isn't better. It's usually a little worse, right?
So in terms of, I'll be very transparent. I think the logistical rollout so far has been pretty disastrous. There were promises of 100 million doses in 2020, then promises of 20 million vaccinated. Today, as we talk, we have about 4.5 million first doses that have been given out, with question marks around how much, if any, immunity you get from the first dose. It seems it's probably some, but we don't really know, and the vaccine makers are being careful to say it's not been tested. At what level do you believe we are going to start to see, and you can answer either or both, deaths and or cases noticeably pulled down by vaccination?
Right. Well, it has been a terrible shortfall so far, as you aptly point out, David. We were expecting at least 20 million people to have had their first dose in December.
Right.
And we're not even quite at 5 million yet. So there is an issue, of course, that their vaccines have largely been delivered. That is, there's close to 20 million out there now, but they're just not getting in people's arms, right. Shots. Now, to get this herd immunity, which is the only way to get to herd immunity, not through natural infections, through vaccines, we need to get, at least approximately 70% of people. But the good part in the United States, if there is a good thing here, is that we let this virus go with rampant spread. And so we have at least 60 to 70 million people who have natural infection-induced immune response.
So you
Now,
believe
again,
that's important now. So that's about 3x the official cases. You believe the real infection rate is about 3 times the official 20 million or so.
That's right. It was just published today, actually, just before we got together in JAMA Network Open, that it's at least 3.2x of the number. So we are at 20 million. So we're at about 65 million based on all the studies. So the point here is that we could get there faster. Go back to your really great question about what if we had a neutralization antibody to the virus, to the spike protein. If we had that, and we could say rapidly, you're coming into your vaccine, you're in the line in the queue, and we tested you, and a couple minutes later say, well, you're good to go. You're good right now. You don't need the vaccine. We need to defer you until we get to 70%. Now, if we could tap into that 60 plus 65 million people, we can get there a lot faster. But if we don't do that, we're looking at third quarter at best. That means we got to get to 2 to 3 million vaccine people a day.
A day, right.
Plus getting them all a second dose. Now, the J&J vaccine, which is the Janssen's coming out, perhaps early February, even later this month. If that clicks, that's a single dose. So that will make life easier. Plus, it doesn't require freezing. So that will make the logistics easier, and it will also add to our vaccine supply. But overall, we're not going to get to population immunity that we need. The faster, the better, especially with this new strain, this new B117. We got to go fast now. This is a race against a very challenging, formidable, highly infectious variant.
One last question about the 60 million that we believe have been infected already. My understanding is there's still a question as to the duration and robustness of the immunity for recovered patients, and questions about, for example, if you had a really mild case, how does your degree of immunity compare to someone who recovered from a more severe case? Does it last 3 months, 6 months, 9? Correct me if I'm wrong. If reinfection was really common, we would have way more examples of it if the number is 60 million. That seems clear. But what do we know about the duration of natural immunity?
Yeah. Oh, you're really on this. This is great. So the reinfection story, in the world, we have like 35 documented cases by genomics that you sequence the virus in the first infection, second, they're very different. We know that it was a reinfection. There's probably considerably more than that. But if you think about the world number of infections, it's really low. That bespeaks the issue that natural immune response to an infection is quite good. Okay, so the interesting thing is the vaccine is what we've written about as superhuman. That is, it's even better. What I mean by that is the average person, now that we've looked out long enough, has at least 8 or 9 months of protection, at least.
Okay.
Maybe even years, but at least 8 or 9 months. Now, remember, you pointed out 5% of people with the vaccine don't have an ideal response, let's say. With the natural response, it's more than that. It could be 10%, could be 12. It's more, because a vaccine gets a much higher level of these neutralizing antibodies, which is the precious response that drives your protection. No less, T cells and other, response that's part of the protection. But most of it's the neutralizing antibodies. So to answer your question, I think what we can say is, if you have a neutralizing antibody, if it's still there at good levels, you're good to be deferred. I mean, you don't need a vaccine right now. We need that for other people to get us to this, because we are unfortunately going to face a vaccine shortage. Unlike Israel, which is the lead, the pace setter, they're going to have enough vaccines. They order early. They have a supply. They have enough vaccines for everybody.
Yeah, I believe they're at 14% already.
Yeah, actually, that was as of the 3rd. As of today, they're going at least 1.5% a day. So they're probably at least 16%. They've now have all the vaccines they need to get everybody vaccinated who's willing, which is most people, of course, there. Unlike what we have, which is some hesitancy, resistance, anti-vaxxers. But even with our issues, our biggest problem is getting shots in the arm, getting the second doses at high scale, like we did in 1947 with smallpox. when we had 6.5 million people in a few weeks. We've got to be doing that now every day throughout the country.
So give us a few bullet points. There's so much that could be said about the logistics that could be organized, but give us a few bullet points about things that should be done right away. One anecdotal story. My stepmom works in healthcare, but not as a direct provider. She works for a company that in sort of management, I guess you would say. And she got a call on January 1st saying, listen, we got vaccines for the first responders. We have 2 vaccines left over. There's no system for us to send these for nurses at a different place. We just have 2 vaccines and they're going to go bad. Do you want a vaccine? And she said, sure. That multiplied by 100 million, it seems inconceivably chaotic. So like, what are the logistical things that need to happen here?
Right. Well, it is crazy that we're not just trying to do everything we can to get vaccines into people. And so we waste, a lot of shots. Obviously, once they're thawed, if they don't get used, they're lost, and we just don't want any of that to happen. So we need mass events. We need an all-out effort to get a huge number of people every day throughout the country, and whether that's getting stadiums and big facilities where just people on an hourly basis show up and quick get their jab, or whether it's mobile efforts with vans and whatever it takes. Obviously pharmacies could help here, because they're pretty widely distributed. So the Walgreens and CVS, they should be part of the story as well. But we need, this idea that, I have high regard for the new administration, but they're talking about 100 million vaccines in 100 days. Well, that's only 50 million people in 100 days of the new administration. That's not nearly enough.
It sounds so good, and yet the math of it is still falling very short.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's just not going to work. We have to be a whole lot more aggressive. I hope that's going to change.
I hope so. We've been speaking with Dr. Eric Topol, who is founder and director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute, also a professor of molecular medicine. Dr. Topol, such a pleasure having you, and I really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy.
Well, I'm really impressed how well you're on this, David. You've really, I didn't think you had a science background, but it sure looks like it.
I don't. My formal training is in business, if you could imagine. No, but listen, it's the issue of our time, and for my audience's sake, I must remain informed.
Well, you're a fast learner. Great to meet you and great to have a conversation.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The number one funding source for the David Pakman Show has been and continues to be membership. And membership is not just a feel-good thing. You get access to the world-famous bonus show every single day just for members, as well as commercial-free audio and video feeds of the show day in and day out. You can sign up for membership very, very quickly at joinpakman.com. That's joinpakman.com. If the normal prices strike you as high, by all means use the coupon code VOTESOON18, all one word, all lowercase. Become a member today.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So yesterday we played clips for you of this absolutely ridiculous phone call that Donald Trump made to the Georgia Secretary of State, asking them to find 11,780 votes and then saying, come on, guys, I just need 11,000 votes to win Georgia. And certainly that call is impeachable. Donald Trump should be impeached for that. He's not going to be, I don't think anyway. He could be impeached after leaving office, but it doesn't seem that there is a political desire for impeachment. But one of the very interesting things that has come out of it is that Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who was on that call, he was the one being pressured, and he is a Republican, being pressured to find a way to give Donald Trump the state of Georgia. He said, it's unlikely we would investigate or investigate criminally or ask criminal charges to be brought. because we have a conflict of interest. We were involved in the call, but it is certainly something, criminal investigation and possibly even charges, that an Atlanta area district attorney could do. And this is, once again, it's just the tip of the iceberg of what we may see once Donald Trump is out of office. And of course, this should be investigated. Here is the Georgia Secretary of State, Republican Brad Raffensperger, explaining, since he's involved in this, he really shouldn't be part of the investigation. And he's right about that, but says that there are others, including the Atlanta area district attorney, that might be the right outfit to investigate.
David Worley, a Democratic member of the state election board, which you chair, has asked you to open an investigation into the call. Will you open that investigation?
I believe that because I had a conversation with the president. Also, he had a conversation with our chief investigator after we did the signature match audit of Cobb County last week. There may be a conflict of interest. I understand that the Fulton County District Attorney wants to look at it. Maybe that's the appropriate venue for it to go.
So the first question, and we'll go through this sequentially. The first question is, what crimes might Trump have committed here? And it's actually a long list. And I'm not saying Trump will face charges. I'm saying the list of possible crimes is long. Federal laws against solicitation of election fraud, I would argue, were broken. To prove it, you need to know intent. But that is hard to prove. But just because something can't be proven in court doesn't mean that, colloquially speaking, you and I can't say, yeah, Trump did that. Federal laws against conspiracy to intimidate, threaten, injure, or oppress any person of rights secured by the Constitution. Georgia state law against solicitation of election fraud arguably was broken. And Georgia state law against willfully tampering with an elector list, voter certificate, ballot box, voting machine, tabulating equipment, or to solicit others to commit such tampering. So, as I told you before, with other Trump investigations, I don't think this is going to go very far, but it may be yet another thorn in Trump's side once he leaves office. I think the most realistic scenario is not Trump ever gets perp walked in handcuffs, not Trump is even ever criminally charged with anything. I think the most likely scenario, if I'm being just, not hyperbolic, but sort of conservative in my thinking with you, is there will be investigations into Trump and his organization that will be a thorn in Trump's side for years to come. Now, another interesting aspect of this, why was the call recorded to begin with? We know now that the Georgia officials on the call did the recording, and they did it because of their knowledge that Donald Trump previously has lied about the content of phone calls. So the recording was almost like an insurance policy for them, assuming Trump would later lie about what was said. They wanted a record to be able to say, here's what was actually said. So it's all completely embarrassing. And, if only we could have seen this coming, right? Like if back in 2016, when we were all sounding the alarm, and unfortunately there were some on the left and right who were saying, it won't be that bad. Trump for 4 years might even get us a true progressive in 2020 that we would all be happy with. Trump will shake things up. He'll sort of bring a different approach. It has certainly been different. There's no doubt about that. But it has been an absolute and complete disaster, regularly attacking in authoritarian fashion multiple, endless aspects of our democratic systems. And undoubtedly, Trump should be impeached after the fact for this. There's no question whatsoever on the merits. Whether he will or won't be, I don't know. Is it even worth doing? I mean, listen, as I said before, there is a duty to impeach if you believe an impeachable action has taken place. And we sort of have to separate the potential outcome, which is not going to be very much, from the duty to do what is right, as Congress is supposed to do. But I, at this point, we're at a loss, and it's simply an emergency to get rid of this guy. We're down to 15 days. We are down to the last 15 days. Different people handle loss differently. There are sore losers. There are angry losers. There are depressive losers. There are narcissists who tend to go more in the direction of, I didn't want to win anyway. There's a really broad range of reaction to loss, and it often changes over time. we're seeing something really interesting on Fox News, which is that suddenly they are all about their feelings and the feelings of conservatives and the feelings of Trumpists, how everybody feels about the election numbers, how everybody feels about the election results, how some of their feelings are now hurt by what has taken place. And you've got to see some of these examples. Here is one from Fox and Friends yesterday morning, where Ainsley Earhardt, one of the hosts, says, you know, staunch conservatives, they feel defeated. They has a sad, for lack of a better term. Take a listen.
Well, I think people who are staunch conservatives in our country just feel so defeated because of this election. They do feel like it was rigged. And then to see what's happening in Georgia, that the Democrats could have the House, Democrats could have the Senate, and then the presidency.
And that's the danger.
Did you hear that? It's disheartening for staunch conservatives that they lost. Where was this understanding back in 2008? Where was this understanding back in 2012? I don't recall it from these same people. Now, part of the irony of all this is that the right has this idea of the facts don't care about your feelings. That's a meme that they love pushing onto the left. And now they all need time, and we need to be careful with their feelings because they are fragile and disheartened by what they are seeing. Here's another, while, by the way, advocating for the essentially for the setting aside of the actual results because they just feel bad about it. Here's another one from yesterday on Fox. This is Senator Ron Johnson, who says, we can't just ignore the concerns and suspicions from right wingers. I guess because there are concerns and suspicions. What, we hold up Joe Biden's inauguration? Check this out. Absent proof, absent evidence, Republican Senator Ron Johnson says we can't just dismiss the concerns of people here.
From my standpoint, we simply cannot dismiss the concerns of tens of millions of Americans that have suspicions.
Wow, we've got to be careful, guys. The suspicions and concerns of these Americans who have fallen for Donald Trump's bogus claims about voter fraud, they need to be babied because they feel bad and they want to put aside the results of the election. It's just absolutely wacky. And here's the cherry on top in this last clip. This is from the same episode of Fox and Friends that we looked at in the first clip. Fox reporter Griff Jenkins is in Dalton, Georgia. That's the location of last night's Trump rally. And there's apparently a fan of Fox anchor Ainsley Earhardt at the rally. And the fan rushes over, and every detail of this exchange is bonkers. Now, of course, neither the reporter nor the Trumpist are wearing masks. The guy actually has a shirt on that says the only thing worse than COVID-19 would be Biden 20. And he's hugging Griff Jenkins, and you can actually hear Steve Doocy in the Fox studio. He sounds uncomfortable about what's going on. This is just out of this world.
I was going to say go give Terry from Detroit, our fan, a big hug, but we can't do that right
Terry!
now. So.
You cannot hug him.
You can't hug him.
2 seconds on my microphone. What do you want to say to Ainsley?
We love you, Ainsley.
Terry, I love Terry. I want to talk to you. You came from Detroit.
God bless America and God bless the president.
She said she loves you too, and she can't believe you came from Detroit. Why did you come from Detroit?
Because I love the president. We want to back him 100%.
All right. Thank you, Terry.
Look at that T-shirt. What does this T-shirt say?
No, Terry, what's your T-shirt say? The only thing worse than COVID-19 would be Biden 20. So,
and that's the truth.
Thank you so much, guys.
That's the truth.
God bless you, Terry.
There you go.
Thank you, Griff.
We love Trump.
All right, Brian Exocy, back to you.
All right, let's bring it.
They're doing this stuff with smiles on their faces, if you can imagine that. It is another country out there. Holy COVID, my friends, is my only reaction. What are these people going to do when former Vice President and now President-elect Joe Biden is sworn in? There are some who say it's going to be violence. Others say it will be dejection and evaporation into the ether. I don't know the answer, but it's certainly scary. We have a voicemail number, and that number is 2192-DAVID-P. Here's something I've actually heard from a bunch of people about mask wearing. Listen to this.
Hey, David. So everybody who works in my office takes the coronavirus pandemic seriously when they're outside the office. But then once we get inside, they all take their masks off. They're not worried about social distancing or anything like that. And I'm the only one who keeps my mask on, keeps hand sanitizing, you know. How bad do you think that this false sense of safety has contributed to the coronavirus spread?
Hugely. And I've heard from other people. I'm really good with my mask. It's mostly red states. I'm pretty sure that in blue states, every place says you've got to have a mask on at a place of work indoors. It's a generalization, blue and red states. But I've heard from people who work in Arkansas, for example, South Carolina is another example, that begrudgingly, outdoors, people will wear masks. They'll wear them at the grocery store, et cetera. But then at their place of work, they take them off. And even if you work with only 8 people, and each of those 8 people is only interacting at home with 2 others, you're still exposed to dozens of people's contacts. And I know of many people who have gotten sick this way. And again, most of the contagion is happening within homes and at places of work, particularly indoor places of work. So I don't really get it. To me, the outdoor is less of a priority. I'm still doing it because I'm a team player, but the indoor, particularly when you're at work all day with people, when we know the longer you're around people, the more likely a contagion event is to take place. I really don't get it. At this point, I'm sort of beyond trying to understand the logic that folks are applying to when they do and don't wear masks. I'm sort of at a loss, but I've heard that from many people. We've got a great bonus show for you today. We will talk about the potential extradition of Julian Assange. We will talk about Jack Ma and other Chinese billionaires MIA after criticizing the Chinese government, and much, much more. Get instant access to today's bonus show by becoming a member at joinpakman.com. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. Blinkist is the app that helps you become a more well-rounded person by letting you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. You can try it for free and get 25% off a subscription by going to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. SteadyMD lets you maintain a meaningful, long-lasting relationship with a primary care physician who you can meet with anytime over phone or video chat. You don't need insurance. It's only $99 a month with no other fees or copays. Visit SteadyMD.com/Pakman to get started.